Welcome, Junior Tukkies. I'm Miss Kutsia, and welcome to the last chapter for Grade 8 Natural Science. We are going to go and move a little bit through the universe and get to know what is out there in the dark, above and outside of our Earth that we know so well. So firstly, we're going to have a look at the Sun. So the Sun is a star. It produces large amounts of heat and light continuously. It never stops. The energy in the Sun comes from a powerful chemical reaction which is known as a nuclear fusion reaction. So what happens during this reaction is that hydrogen gas is changed into helium gas. So two hydrogen molecules are fused together to form helium. And as that chemical reaction takes place, it releases large amounts of heat, or actually energy, just in the form of heat and light. So around the Sun, we will find different types of objects. So our solar system is very similar. If we have to give it a shape, it's a flat disk or a plate shape. We have the Sun, that is the center of our solar system, and it is surrounded by planets and all other kinds of objects. So firstly, we have the 8 planets and their moons. We have asteroids, meteors, meteorites, and also some dwarf planets. Then we also have very distant icy and dust particles as well. So let's have a look at the 8 planets that orbit the Sun. So we will look at each of the 8 planets. We will look at their size, the distance from the Sun, the number of moons that they have, the composition, so the composition of the atmosphere, of the soil that we find. We will look at the different temperatures and also the time it takes to orbit or rotate around the Sun. So the first planet that we find is Mercury. So Mercury is our smallest planet. You do not have to know every single detail of every single planet. Know your smallest, your biggest planet, the planet that can sustain life, and then a few, the hottest planet and the coldest planet as well. So the distance from the Sun is about 58 million kilometers. It has no moons, and it has a very rocky composition. So you will find a lot of craters due to meteors and meteorites that hit into the surface of Mercury. And it also has no atmosphere. The temperatures can vary. So an example of a temperature that will be reached on Mercury is 167 degrees Celsius. Then it takes Mercury about 88 days to orbit the Sun. So on Earth, it takes Earth about 366 or 365 days to orbit around the Sun. So it does not take a lot of time for Mercury to rotate around the Sun. So that means a year on Mercury will be about 88 days. So our second planet is Venus. This is a planet that's smaller than Earth. It's about 108 million kilometers from the Sun. It has one moon, similar to Earth. Also, again, a rocky planet. It is covered with craters and also living volcanoes. The temperatures ranges to about 480 degrees Celsius, and it takes about 225 days to rotate around the Sun. So let's have a look at Earth. So Earth is about 150 million kilometers from the Sun. It only has one moon. It is made out of metals and rocks. It has a large variation of temperatures, and it takes about 365 days to orbit the Sun. Mars is our fourth planet, also known as the red planet. It's smaller than Earth, and it's about 228 million kilometers from the Sun. It has two moons, also made out of metals and rocks, very similar to Earth, but it's covered with a red substance. The temperatures can vary from minus 125 to 20 degrees Celsius. Then it takes about 687 days to orbit the Sun. Number 5 is Jupiter. So this is our largest planet. It's about 778 million kilometers from the Sun. It has 67 moons. It's a gas giant, so that means it has no solid surface. The temperatures ranges between minus 145 degrees, and then it takes about 12 years to orbit around the Sun. Planet number 6 is Saturn. So this is also larger than Earth. It's 1,427 million kilometers from the Sun, and it has about 53 moons. It's also a gas planet, and it also is covered with hot liquid hydrogen. The temperatures is about a minus 178 degrees Celsius, and it takes about 29.5 years to orbit around the Sun. Then the last planet is Uranus. Sorry, that's not our last planet. Planet number 7 is larger than Earth again. It's about 2,900 kilometers away from the Sun, million kilometers away from the Sun. It has 27 moons. It's also a gas planet. Temperatures of minus 224 degrees, and it takes 84 years to orbit around the Sun. Now our last planet is Neptune. So Neptune is also larger than Earth. It's about 4,450 million kilometers away from the Sun. It only has 13 moons, and it has an atmosphere that's made out of hydrogen, helium, and methane. The temperatures is about minus 214 degrees, and then it takes about 165 years to orbit around the Sun. We obviously don't just get the planets around our Sun, we get different other objects, which something like asteroids. So they're very large pieces of rocks. So they will vary in size. The diameter can be a few meters wide, even to a few thousand of kilometers wide. So most of the asteroids orbit the Sun in the asteroid belt, and this we will find between Mars and Jupiter. Then we have a comet. So a comet is a very old frozen rock which consists out of dust and ice. So a comet moves in an elliptical orbit in any direction around the Sun. Then we have meteors and meteorites. So meteors are very small pieces of rock that usually burns out when it reaches the atmosphere or Earth's atmosphere. And that's what we call a shooting star. So this piece of rock never ends up on the surface of Earth. But then we find a meteorite, which is a piece of rock or metal which travels through the planet's atmosphere and ends up on the surface of the planet or even on the moon. Then we have Kuiper's belt, which is a disc-shaped region which is on the edge of our solar system just beyond Neptune. So Kuiper's belt is about 7.4 thousand million kilometers away from the Sun, and it contains very large pieces of ice and rock. They're actually quite big. They can be greater than 100 kilometers in width. Then we also have the Oort cloud. So this is a spherical cloud of comets that lies on the outer skirt of our solar system. It's about 1 light year away from the Sun. So one of our most famous comets that originated in the Oort cloud is known as Halley's Comet. So let's have a look at our solar system. So the Sun is found in the center of our solar system, which has 8 planets that orbits around the Sun. So each of these planets has their own pathway which they will travel around the Sun, and they all travel in the same direction. Due to gravity, these planets are kept in the perfect condition on their own path around the Sun. So Earth's position in our solar system. So Earth is the 3rd planet in the solar system. It is the only planet that we know that has the ability to support life. So here's a few conditions how Earth has the ability to support life. So firstly is the ranging temperatures from about -4 to 25 or even 40 degrees Celsius, which is perfect or ideal for survival. Then we have water in the form of liquid, gas, and solids on the even with the ranging temperatures of Earth. Then we have sunlight, which provides energy for our food chains. And then we have oxygen, which is needed by all living organisms, and also the ozone layer that protects us against UV light coming from the sun. So our Milky Way. So our solar system is found in the Milky Way galaxy. So a galaxy is a collection of stars that's held together by gravity. So our sun is one of billions of stars that's found in the Milky Way galaxy. So it has a spiral shape and quite a lot of arms. So our sun is located towards the edge of the Milky Way. So on a clear night sky, if you look up in the sky and you see a white stroke going down a cross section of the night sky, that's part of the Milky Way that's actually quite visible. So our nearest star. So the sun is the nearest star to Earth. But if we look at the star that's the nearest to the sun, which is actually visible, it's known as Alpha Centauri. So this is actually, it's one of the brightest stars of the two pointers which we find in the Southern Cross. So Alpha Centauri is about 4.2 light years away from our solar system. So what is a light year, hours, and minutes? So people use light years, hours, or minutes to describe the distance of stars and other objects beyond our solar system. So a light year is a distance that light travels in 1 year. So for example, 1 light year is equal to about 10 trillion kilometers. A light hour is a distance, or the distance that light travels in 1 hour. So our solar system is about, in diameter, 13 light hours. Then a light minute is about it's how fast or the distance that light travels in 1 minute. So for example, it takes light 8 minutes from the sun to reach Earth. So what's beyond our solar system? And in our Milky Way galaxy, we will find millions and billions of stars scattered around the universe. So we will have a number of galaxies in our universe. They vary in size. It's about an estimate of 28 billion light years. So let's have a look at early viewings of space. So people can see planets and stars in the night sky, of course with a little bit of help. So some of these stars has been arranged into visible constellations. Different cultures have identified and named certain of these constellations, and there's also some stories linked to these constellations. So here are a few common constellations. We have the Southern Cross, Virgo, Orion, Aries, and Aquarius. So what is a telescope? So people can see more detail in the sky when they use a telescope. So what a telescope does is that it magnifies or makes an object that's very, very far away bigger. So there are different types of telescopes. So we have an optical telescope that receives light. It focuses it by refraction or reflection. So two of these examples are the SALT and the Hubble Space Telescope. Then we also find the radio telescope, which works with radio waves and focuses them by means of reflection. So one of these examples is the SKA telescope. So there are certain conditions for us to meet the requirements, for example, to have a look and study the stars and planets that is found around our solar system. So it should include a cloudless sky with limited light and air pollution. South Africa has the perfect location to meet these requirements. And that is it. This is our last chapter for grade 8. Thank you for joining us, and please make sure to watch our grade 9 videos next year.